Well, hello guys, welcome to my C# WPF Modern Design course. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to create this window right here. It has a really stunning look to it with, it looks really modern and like somewhat of an Instagram feel to it, right? You can type in a username here and then the password, and the buttons are going to be like somewhat custom as well. So let's get right into it. So we're obviously going to start off by creating a new project. It's going to be a WPF project. And make sure that it's, well, you can do .NET Core as well. It won't really matter for the UI, but for this example, we're going to be using the .NET framework next. And then we're going to select the name. We're going to call this Clean UI or even Modern UI. Anything works, really. Once it's started, I'm going to change my workflow a little bit. I'm going to click this button right here to get a vertical split rather than a horizontal one. I'm going to click it right there. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is change the height and the width. For the height, I'm going to keep it at like 450, but then the width is going to be like 380. I think that's going to look pretty nice. Yeah, I'm going to zoom in by control and scrolling up. And now the first thing we need to do is add some properties to the window itself. So allow transparency is going to be 1. We're going to set that to true. And we're also going to set the background to transparent. Now, for the actual window style, we need to set that to none, and then resize we're going to set to no resize. This is going to be the base that we're working with. Now, in order, because you remember how it had like rounded corners and everything nice looking like that, we're going to start off by adding a grid like so. Super simple. Now we're going to add some row definitions. So we're going to do grid dot row definitions, and we're going to have 2 of those. So like so. Perfect. Now we have 2 rows here. Right after that, we're actually going to make, this is where everything is going to start looking really pretty. We're going to add a border with a corner radius of 10. And then we need a row span because we want it to span over to the second row as well, so it's not stuck in here. So we're going to do grid row span 2. Perfect. Now within the border, we want to do border dot background, and now we add something within this. We're actually going to add a linear gradient brush, and within this we need 2 gradient stops. Perfect. Now we got 2 empty gradient stops. Let's set the color of the first one. So color, this one's going to be hashtag, well, it's going to be a hex value, so 7BE9F6. And the offset is going to be 0.0. And the second color is going to be hashtag for a hex value F08 3DA. And of course a offset of 1. That's already starting to look really nice. Let's zoom in so you guys can see the code a bit better, the markup. And if we debug this by clicking F5, we can see that this looks amazing. Obviously, we can change this to whatever colors you see fit, but to me, this looks great. Now, remember how I had a logo up here and then some text down here? That's what we're going to create right now. So we're going to add a stack panel for that. And then within the stack panel, we obviously need a image for the image, the logo, and then a text block right under it. Now, what I did is I just downloaded a quick logo for a simple house, a modern looking house, and that's what I'm going to be using as the source for the image. So source, we're going to head into images and the house. And as you can see, it's pretty big. So we're going to change the width to like 80. And that already looks a lot better. And then for the text block, we're just going to set the text and some other properties. We're going to set the text to modern design. And obviously it looks kind of gross right now. So let's just change the font weight to light. And then we're going to set the font family to Helvetica. Font family to Helvetica. Oh, I can't even spell Helvetica. There we go. And then let's set the font size to like 22. That looks nice. Foreground to white. And the horizontal alignment to center. And that already looks Very, very nice. Now let's change that. You can see how it's like at the top. We don't want to set the margin or anything. We're just going to set the vertical alignment to center. And oh my god, that's already looking so good. All right, so we're almost done. We just need to add some, input fields like username and password, and then the buttons, which we're gonna have a custom style to, which is gonna be super cool. So let's start by creating a stack panel. And this is obviously gonna be in the second grid. So not that one, but the second grid row. So we're gonna set grid, not row, and we're gonna set that to 1. Perfect. And we could create a custom theme for this so it doesn't look as crowded with the text block or text box in here, but we're actually going to do it right here, and then you can move it over like we're going to do later. So create a text box. There we go. And it can actually be self-closed. And we're going to start off by changing the font family to Helvetica. The font weight is going to be light. And then the text property, for demonstration purposes, we're just going to set a default value here, but otherwise you would data bind because we're using MVVM or WPF. So we're going to set it to username. Font size is actually going to be 20. Horizontal alignment is going to be left. Foreground white. Background transparent. Border thickness is going to be 0 because we don't want any ugly borders around it. The width is going to be, well, 235, I think is going to be 235. We can mess around with this later. The horizontal content alignment is also going to be left, and the opacity roughly 0.5. Let's actually, without using margins, we might have to use margins later, but let's use horizontal alignment center rather than left. That's going to look a bit better for now. And also for the stack panel, since we're going to have a icon to the right of it, let's set the orientation to horizontal. Oop. Horizontal, perfect. And for the icons that we're going to be using, we're actually going to be using this icon pack from GitHub. I'm going to be using the, let's see, the material design one. Yeah, I'm going to click that one for the NuGet. And then just copy this right here. Let's head into Tools, NuGet Package Manager Console. It opens up down here. Just paste it in and click Enter. It should have installed without any issues whatsoever. And then to actually use it, we can copy paste this WPF sample that they have right here. Scroll down on the GitHub, and then we just paste it in here. And you should be able to switch out this to Math Apps. And then as you can see, we got a cool little dude here. Now, since this is going to be for the username, let's just change the text box height property to 25, so it looks a bit better. And then this is we're going to be using account. Now we can obviously change the color of it. So let's make this a bit more readable. There we go, and then set the foreground to white. Perfect, that's looking a lot better. And then to indicate that, this is the end of this text box, we're actually going to put a border right here. We can self-close that one. We're going to set the width to like 250. And then we are actually going to do what else? Well, the height, obviously. We're going to put it not too high. We're going to put it like 2 pixels. And then once the background is set to white, we can actually set the opacity to 0.5 as well. And here's the thing. It doesn't align under it. It's because it's not in a stack panel. These things should be wrapped in a stack panel. So let's just put it in the stack panel. The orientation is vertical by default. We don't have to mess with the orientation. We are, however, going to change this grid row right here. We can remove it from here. And then put it in this stack panel right here. As you can see, it's now aligned under it. There's still some margin issues that we will fix in just a second, but let's move on. So in order to fix the margin issue, we're just going to add to the text box property, or to the text box control, we're going to add a property called margin, and it goes from left, top, right, bottom. So we're going to set like 65, 0, 0, 0, and That looks really close. Let's try changing it to maybe 63. Yeah, that looks good to me. All right, so that's looking really good so far. Now we can just copy paste this really, and then just change some of the properties. So we can copy paste the stack panel, which contains the text box and the icon pack with the border, and then just paste it here, and it should add one underneath. So let's start by changing the actual, well, it's not going to be a text box, it's going to be a password box. Here we go, and we can't set the text to username, but we can set the password to password by default. Again, data binding, but data binding with a text or a password box, I should remind you that it doesn't have a dependency property to bind the actual password. So you can't bind it. That's because of security issues, but that's for another video. Now for the icon, we want to change that to password. Well, yeah, that looks good. The text box password looks good to me. And then if you want, you can obviously set some margin to the bottom stack panel, which contains the password box, to I don't know, something on the upper axis. So left, top, right, bottom. So it's going to be the second one. So 0, 10, 0, 0. And some spacing in between looks better. I'm going to do 20. Yeah, that looks good to me. Now for the final stretch, let's add 2 buttons with custom design. In order to do this, you first need to create a resource dictionary. So you're going to right click your project, add, and then resource dictionary. I'm going to be calling this button theme, button modern button theme. You can remove this last line right here because we won't be needing it. And now we need to start working on the style. So I'm just gonna, there we go, create a style. The target type is going to be button X type and then button. There we go. We're going to start off by setting some simple setters with, setting the properties using setters. So we're going to do setter property foreground. We're going to set the value to white. We can self-close this. We can copy paste that and put in twice because we want to add 2 more properties. For instance, we want to add the font family. And we're going to change that to, well, you guessed it right, Helvetica. And the third one's going to have the font weight, so it's going to be light. As for the background, we can create a new one, a new property, background, and we're going to set it to transparent. This is going to be what it's going to be by default. And this is where all the magic comes in. So when hovering over the thing, when changing the border, etc., etc., this is where it's all going to start coming in. So we're going to create one more property, but this is going to be template. And then we won't set a value here. We're actually going to set a setter value. So it's not going to be self-closed. We'll do setter.value. And this is where we're going to be adding all the code. We can start off by creating a control template. It's going to be managing the template of the button. We need to set the target type. So target type X and then, type. It's going to be button once again. Now the control template is obviously going to be within a border. And for the border, which is going to be the actual, the button, the square of the button that you see, this is going to be controlling. It's going to be the template in which everything resides within, so to say. We're going to set the background. And we're going to template bind that actually. So we're going to do template binding. And then we're going to bind it to the background property. For the border, we're also going to set a corner radius because we want it round. So I'm going to set it to like 20. We don't want it completely round, but somewhat round. And we're going to set the border thickness to 2 because we want some border around it. Border brush to white, and that looks good to me. I'm just going to indent this real quick. So there we go. That looks good. Now for the content presenter, in which, you know, it's going to display the text. We're going to set that to, you know, everything's going to be vertical, or I mean center. So horizontal alignment, center, and the vertical alignment, center. We can self-close this as well. All right, so that's the groundwork for the button done. Now we're going to set some style triggers. That's, for instance, when you move your mouse above the button, that's a trigger. That's like an event, right? So you can look at it that way. Setter dot, oh, I mean style dot triggers. And we're going to create a trigger for when the mouse is over. So it's going to be property is mouse over, and the value is going to be true. So whenever the mouse is over, when the mouse is over the control, and it's, you know, the value is going to be true, and when that value is true, we're going to use some setters. So for instance, we're going to change, we can self-close this as well. We're going to set the property, the property background to a different color. So obviously it's going to be one color when we start off, but then, you know, once we hover over it, this is, I'm explaining this so you can put whatever color fits you. If you've used different colors for your buttons, it's going to be fine. I'm just going to put mine to white. I'm also going to add a new property called opacity. I'm going to change it to, well, 0.4 is probably going to look somewhat good. And we're also going to change the foreground. So the text that you see on the button is going to be a different color as well once you hover over it. All right, so the theme is done. You can add another style trigger, but instead of is mouse over, you can do is pressed. So when you click the button, you can change the background property just like you did with the is mouse over. Now, in order for this to work, we need to head into app.saml. And within our application resources, we need to add a resource dictionary dot merge dictionaries. And in here, we're going to add a resource dictionary, self-closed, with the source of the theme that we just created. So I can't see it. There we go. All right. We're going to build this real quick. Oops, I went a bit too fast. We need to add that within a resource dictionary. So we're just going to create a resource dictionary up top and then move this into the resource dictionary. Perfect. Now, since we didn't add a key to the style, this is going to apply to all the buttons that we add. So if we were to add a button within here, so let's just put it under here. Let's just, to demonstrate it real quick, let's set the width to, I don't know, 100 and the height to 25. And the content is going to be login with capital letters. We can see that it still has the design, but it's placed in the wrong place. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a stack panel within the stack panel, but the orientation is going to be horizontal. So stack panel, can't spell, orientation horizontal. And then we're going to add the button in there. As you can see, it's now under that thing. The width is a bit too wide for my taste, so I'm going to set it to, actually the height is not high enough, so we're going to put it to 40. Okay, yeah, that looks a lot better. Let's just copy the button and paste it in. As you can see, it's right next to it, as it should be. We're going to call this register. Perfect. Right, so let's fix the margin issue. We're actually going to change the stack panel. We're going to set the margin to, first of all, lower it. So it's going to be the second value. Let's put a 50. Should be, yeah, that's fine. And then for this button, we're going to do, let's try 50. So let's do a margin of 50, 0, 0, 0. Okay, yeah, let's try 60. That's looking a lot better. Now we need a margin to the left as well. Let's try 60 there. Yeah, looks good to me. Now let's run this application. All right, so when hovering over, we can see that it changes the color as expected. We got the text box right here, the password box right here, but there's one flaw. We can't drag and move. Now, why is that? The most elegant and simple solution to this would be adding a left or the mouse pressed event to the actual window. Now this won't break any MVVM patterns, so don't be scared, because it's relative to this view and this view only. So we're gonna do mouse down. We're gonna create a new method, and it's gonna create something code behind. It's fine. And we're just gonna add if and the event arguments, if the e dot mouse left button, if the left button has the button state pressed, then we're gonna do drag move. We're just gonna add that event, and that's how easy it is. Now I don't like this code block right here, because it's only one line. So yeah, and now let's try it again. As you can see, we can move it around. No functionality has changed, and this works as expected. Now you can add the, as I said, the left click, the style trigger if you want to. If not, then that's totally up to you. You can change the icons, colors, anything. This is just, a base on how to build this. So that being said, thank you for watching. I hope this was somewhat educational. I'll see you in the next one.